What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the latest film coming from writer-director Guy Ritchie, and that film is called The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. Directed by Guy Ritchie, who wrote this film alongside Paul Tomasi, Eric Johnson, and Arash Amel, this film is based on a true story and is most notably based on a novel by Damian Lewis and stars people like Henry Cavill, Alex Pettyfer, Cary Elwes, Alan Ritchson, Henry Golding, and more. So here we are talking about the latest film coming from Guy Ritchie, who's a director that I'm always intrigued to see a new project from, but I won't lie, in modern days, he's a director that's a little bit hit or miss for me. Some of his earlier works are definitely films I have a little bit more of an attachment to, with more recent films feeling a lot of times like just another Guy Ritchie film, which is unfortunate to say. Every here and there though, he does surprise me with something that I really enjoy and reminds me why I'm a big fan of Guy Ritchie. So I went into this with fairly tame expectations, but excited to check it out just based on the trailers. I love seeing Henry Cavill with his tongue out, just gunning people down in the trailers. It seemed like a good, fun, over-the-top action war movie that, like I mentioned, was based on a true story, but had that Guy Ritchie style to it to give it a little bit of a flair. And you have a star-studded cast across the board as some of those names I just mentioned, and I just enjoyed that element right out of the gate. That's one of my favorite things when it comes to a Guy Ritchie film, is he usually has a great cast. And unfortunately, though, I was a little worried going into it as well, because his film from last year, Operation Fortune Ruse de Guerre, was a film I wasn't really crazy about. It was led by Jason Statham and had tons of other fantastic names in it, but unfortunately made my top 20 least favorite films of 2023, and so I went into this a little bit worried, even though the trailers did seem like a good time. Now, without getting into my thoughts just yet, or without getting into spoilers, let's touch on what this movie is all about. As I just mentioned, it's based on a true story, and at the very beginning of the movie, we're introduced to Winston Churchill, who is putting together a ragtag group of individuals made up of mercenaries and criminals to go out and destroy a very important ship that is in German territory. This is a ship that has a lot of important goods on it for the Germans and would be a big hit against the German army. And so the base bare bones premise of this film is this ragtag group of mercenaries and criminals has been put together to go and destroy said ship. And along the way, they have to come up with different ruses, different plans to get in and out, destroy people. There's a bunch of great action sequences along the way, a lot of manipulation, a lot of spy work as well, and sometimes just over the top gunplay. And on one hand, what I can say about this film is that you have a great cast with Henry Cavill in the lead, and he gives a really fun, charismatic performance, with Alan Ritchson being my second favorite character in the film. He's brutal, he has some badass action sequences throughout the course of the film, and he was a lot of fun, very funny at times as well. And that was the biggest kind of positive I can give the cast across the board. Everybody's charismatic, everybody's likable, everybody has a moment to shine, whether it be in moments of action or in moments of charisma. And with Henry Cavill and Alan Ritchson, like I mentioned, being at the top of that list for me. On top of that, you also have some fun action that leads to some really great hand-to-hand combat, as well as some great gunplay, and like a lot of Guy Ritchie films, utilizes a lot of great actual practical effects and stunt work, as well as some great actual practical explosions, which is something I always enjoy. And you see a lot of the actors doing a lot of their own stunt work and action, which is always fantastic as well. So you have great action at times, you have a really charismatic cast with some funny moments and some likable characters, and you would think that this movie would be solid. However, with all of that said though, I do have to be honest in saying that in a lot of ways, this just felt like another Guy Ritchie film. The story overall is pretty straightforward and bare bones, and while I did enjoy a lot of the segments of the film and find myself enjoying a lot of the action and a lot of those charismatic moments between the characters, I ultimately found a lot of the dialogue to just be very generic heist, let's put together a team, let's go destroy this kind of thing, kind of movie dialogue. It just felt very much like dialogue you've seen in these kind of movies over and over again. It doesn't ever really feel like it's reinventing the wheel, and I'm not necessarily saying that it needs to, but it never really felt like it was ever doing something new, vibrant, exciting with the genre. It just felt like another fairly predictable Guy Ritchie film that just has a group going to achieve a goal, and that's about it. There's really not much more to it, and I think the thing I could have really enjoyed about this film a lot more is you do have this strong cast of actors in the film that all have some moments to shine, but ultimately I don't really feel like the script ever really does anything all that much to really give them any meat on the bone. Most of these characters for me were fairly bare bones. They were pretty hollow in a lot of ways, and while they have moments to shine in action and quick little funny moments, I never really felt like I got to know them. You know when you're watching a movie and you get to the very end of the movie, the third act is there, you can tell you're in the climax of the film, and you just don't really feel like you got to know the characters by the time you got to the end. You're there, you're at the end, there's some cool things to see, it's loud, it's, you know, bombastic, but there really isn't much that's tugging at your heartstrings with these characters ever really being in danger or doing anything that makes you kind of want to root for them. There were a couple of moments in this film where some of the audience members around me were enjoying it, clearly more than I was, but I never really found the film to be all that gripping narratively, and it just felt like a movie that you would kind of throw on a lazy Saturday afternoon on a streaming service that you would kind of watch one time, move on, maybe say that was good enough, that was fine, and not necessarily rush to go see it again or tell your friends that they need to see it immediately. I can't necessarily say this is a movie that I would recommend to people to rush to theaters to see immediately, but like I said, it's more of one of those movies like on a lazy Sunday where you just kind of want to throw something on. It's enjoyable enough. Again, I really want to give the cast their flowers here, and I do want to give Guy Ritchie his flowers as well too, because while I didn't necessarily love the narrative of this film, and I found a lot of it to feel very derivative of films just like this, he definitely knows how to direct action, and he definitely knew how to direct these actors in a lot of these great fun moments between the characters. I just wish there was more meat on the bone when it came to the story, and I wish it didn't feel so hollow, so that by the time I got to the end, I just as an audience member never really felt like I got to know these characters or be attached to them or care about any of their outcomes. Anybody in this film could have died at any point, and quite frankly, I wouldn't have cared at all. And another weak element of this film is the villain. There are multiple Germans that we see throughout the course of the film, multiple Nazis, but the most notable one is the character of Heinrich Löhr, played by Till Schweiger, who's in the film and has a presence to some degree, but ultimately never really does anything that's all that impactful, never really does anything that's all that villainous. You're more told that he's a threat, you're more told that he's worse than Nazis, as they say in the movie, but ultimately he just kind of sits around getting manipulated for half of the film, ultimately realizes that he's being manipulated, and then does some bad guy things, but all of it felt fairly generic, and there was nothing to his character that ever really made me feel afraid for the characters that we're following. And ultimately, by the time we got to the end of the movie, I was just like, that's just another Guy Ritchie film. I liked it more than Operation Fortune from last year, but truthfully, not all that much more. So that's going to be my thoughts on The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. I think the title and the cast is way cooler than the finished product of the film. I just wish I could say that I enjoyed the film more, but I just didn't. So that's going to be my thoughts. Definitely want to hear what you guys have to say. Leave any and all comments down below. Is this a film that's on your radar? Did you enjoy it? Did you not enjoy it? Whatever the case may be, leave any and all comments down below, and I'll see you beautiful people in the next one. Bye-bye.